Hello, everybody. Bienvenue à toutes et tous. My name is Kim Nelson, and along with the producing team at the Siminovitch Foundation, I'm thrilled to welcome you to the Siminovitch Forum, the fourth in a series of conversations about innovation in Canadian theatre. Tonight is a very special night. Community nominations came in from across the country for who should become the 2021 Siminovitch Prize laureate. A jury of talented theater professionals from diverse backgrounds met for 4 days of deliberations in late September. And here we are now, with the chance to meet the 4 they selected as the future of theater design in Canada. Ce soir, nous faisons la connaissance des 4 finalistes, reconnus par un jury de professionnels talentueux de la scène comme représentant le futur du design de la conception théâtrale. The conversation this evening will take place in French and in English with simultaneous translation. If you'd like to hear the conversation in English only or in French only, you can click the interpretation link at the bottom of your Zoom screen and then select the language of your choice. Notre entretien de ce soir se passera en français et en anglais avec traduction simultanée. Mais si vous voulez entendre la conversation uniquement en français ou uniquement en anglais, vous pouvez cliquer sur le bouton « Interprétation » au bas de votre écran Zoom et sélectionner la langue de votre choix. I'll give you a moment to change that. Je vous donne un petit moment. If you're having any technical trouble at any point in the event, please let us know in the chat and someone will answer you right away. You will also hear that everyone who speaks this evening is going to give a visual description for any vision impaired folks in the audience. A visual description sounds something like, I am Kim Nelson. I am currently in my living room. I have a gray wall behind me, as well as an old-fashioned stereo system and a Miles Davis record. I am wearing a blue crew neck top. I have a short black afro, dark brown eyes, and I look like in my early to mid 30s. A coy smile just spread across my face. As we gather in this virtual space, I would like to take a moment to recognize that we are all connected with one another. Through the winds that blow air into our lungs, through the waters that go deep into the earth and up into the sky, and through the ground beneath our feet. I would also like to take a moment to appreciate the inextricable relationship between these fertile lands and territories on which I am a settler, and the work we celebrate tonight. Non seulement sommes-nous unis les abondantes que nous cohabitons, mais cette terre fait partie de l'œuvre que nous célébrons ce soir. The earth and forests are built into the woods created within performance spaces. The gifts of the plants and creatures become the cloth of the costumes and fabrics that color, texturize, and fill in those worlds. And the minerals, air, and water are transformed into the electricity that feeds the lighting through which we disappear and find ourselves in those liminal spaces created by performance. Innovation transforms and alchemizes the bounty of bounty of the land. But even the creative process is derived from our primeval and emotional relationship to our natural environment. And so we acknowledge the importance of these lands and territories in all we do, and acknowledge that they are historically the home of the Indigenous peoples, many of whom have been forced to leave their lands. Nous reconnaissons l'histoire traditionnelle du territoire sur lequel nous vivons et prospérons. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. Nous reconnaissons que les terres sur lesquelles se trouve le bureau-chef de la Fondation Siminovitch font partie du territoire traditionnel des Wendat, des Anishinaabe, des Haudenosaunee et des Mississauga de la Première Nation Crédit. We recognize them as the original, present, and future caretakers of this land. We recognize the Indigenous peoples as the first storytellers, the first to have lived, celebrated, lamented, and sung on these lands. And we pay our respects to the elders, past and present, and the essential tradition of oral history. We are grateful to live on this land. Nous assumons nos responsabilités collectives les uns envers les autres et la terre nourricière. And we pledge to turn our acknowledgement into action, to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration, and to be partners in the care of the land, water, and all who live here. If there are Indigenous people on this call, you are invited to share your tribe in the chat, if you so wish, so that we may recognize you. I would like to introduce you to our host, but first, as I mentioned earlier, the Siminovitch Prize jury is selected annually from working theater professionals from varied backgrounds. The 2021 jury included Catherine Bourgeois from Montreal, Jenny Jimenez in Toronto, James Lavoie, based in Montreal, and Corey Payette in Vancouver, along with jury chair Vanessa Porteous, Calgary. We would like to thank these jury members once again for their thoughtful consideration and the many, many hours they dedicated to reviewing the nominations and discussing the candidates. I am now very pleased to share that we have one of the 5 jurors, James Lavoie, to moderate today's conversation. James is a Montreal-based set and costume designer. He has created over 100 theater and circus productions that have been experienced by audiences in over 20 countries across 5 continents. James has collaborated with theater companies such as Centaur Theatre, the National Arts Centre, Canadian Stage Company, Buddies in Bad Times, as well as many circus companies, including Cirque du Soleil and Les Sept Doigts de la Main. James is currently the artist in residence with the Scenography, Set, and Costume Design program at the National Theatre School of Canada, under the Jennifer Margaret Hooper Design Residency Program.
Hello, everybody. I'm James, and I am your moderator host for this evening. I'm sitting here in my apartment. There are some dark windows behind me, quite a few plants also, too. I have green eyes, short, dark brown and graying hair, a shortish beard. I think I look early 40s, and I'm wearing a black long sleeve t-shirt.
Hi, James.
Hey there, how's it going?
It's great. Happy to see you here.
I'm happy to be here.
And now for this year's Siminovitch Prize finalists. Et maintenant, place à nos finalistes. Michelle Ramsey is an award-winning lighting designer who has created designs for dance, theater, and opera companies across Canada and around the world. The evolution of Michelle's unique aesthetic can be seen throughout her 20-year career on the spectrum between small independent shows and large-scale productions. Noted for her insightful and imaginative use of light to get to the heart of the story, Michelle's lighting is described by a peer as somehow simultaneously in-world and otherworldly. Her work is inventive and unexpected, channeling the emotional reality of the play through light. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Michelle here. I'm sitting in my dining room and I'm framed by a window and a white bookcase filled with bins, notebooks, and plants. I'm a white cis woman with short brown and silver hair and a lot of freckles. I'm wearing grayish clear glasses and a dark blue and white check shirt. And I'm also wearing a little light bulb pendant necklace.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Après l'obtention d'un diplôme d'études théâtrales, Linda Brunel a créé des costumes pour le théâtre, l'opéra, la danse et l'univers du cirque. Pour Linda, la conception de costumes ne se limite pas à l'habillement, mais constitue plutôt l'évocation d'un état d'être pour l'interprète et pour le public. Elle est réputée pour sa rigueur, sa perspicacité, sa capacité à inspirer le meilleur de ses collaborateurs et surtout pour sa recherche constante et ininterrompue de nouvelles possibilités dans cette forme d'art. Bonjour Linda.
Bonjour. Mon nom est Linda. Je suis dans un espace amical, en fait, chez un ami, entouré derrière moi, il y a un escalier, il y a un mur en métal, anthracite, et j'ai les yeux bleus, j'ai les cheveux poivre et sel, et ça me fait plaisir d'être parmi vous.
Merci d'être parmi nous, Linda. Jillian Gallo is a set and costume designer who has designed close to 90 productions across Canada, from new plays to opera, in small independent theaters to the largest stages of the country. Most notably, she designed costumes for the Canadian Opera Company's world premiere of Hadrian in 2018 and Louis Riel in 2017. Jillian's designs illuminate hidden themes, contradictions, and paradoxes, and reveal the deepest forces at work to the audience in an unexpected way. One performer describes putting on her costume every night as a profound experience of putting on her character's skin. Hi, Jillian.
Hello, I'm Jillian, and I'm in my studio. I have a rather vibrant painting behind me of an urban street, and I am a white woman with brown hair, currently pulled back, and I'm wearing a dark blue dress. Thank you for having me.
Finally, but last but not least, Nancy Bryant is an established costume designer living in Vancouver and works widely for design for dance, theater, opera, and television. Collaborations with choreographer Crystal Pite have had much notoriety in Europe, in the US, the UK, and across Canada, including pieces with the National Ballet of Canada, the Paris Opera Ballet, Royal Opera House, Netherlands Dance Theatre, and with Pite's company, Kid Pivot. Nancy's rigor, collaborative gifts, astonishing breadth of vision, and technical prowess are exceptional. Her costumes are breathtaking in their aesthetic range and detail, and can be provocations to further invention by performers and directors. Hi, Nancy.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Nancy Bryant, and I'm sitting in my little studio office upstairs in our house. And I have whitish hair with a bit of pepper in the back. And I have glasses, and wearing a black top with a little striped top under that, and a sweater. And it's kind of a cloudy day outside, which I'm looking out the window at right now in Vancouver.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today. We are so looking forward to this discussion. And James, I am now handing it over to you.
Thank you so much, Kim. That was great. First of all, I do just want to quickly offer, my congratulations to all and each of you, the 4 finalists, on being this year's shortlist. I feel an immense sense of gratitude that I get this moment to speak with all of you, and I could happily now go on at length about my admiration for all of you and your work, but we do actually have a lot of questions that we hope to get through to tonight. So if it's okay with y'all, we're just gonna dive right into it. So to start, on the jury, we talked a lot about 2 things the Siminovitch Prize celebrates: excellence and innovation. Obviously, it's easy to think of innovation as being connected to cutting edge technology or as to doing something wildly new. And, yes, that absolutely is innovation. But on the jury, as we talked, more nuanced, kind of softer understanding started to emerge. And I found it really interesting. This idea that theater and live performance is, they're not new art forms. And so the question was asked, can innovation be considered kind of continuing to find ways in which we draw connecting lines between our past, present, and our future? Personally, this idea was really exciting to me, but I wonder what you all think about this. How does, what does innovation mean to you all? Ideally, anyone can kind of jump in and talk about their vision of innovation.
I think that innovation, as you were even speaking about it, it occurred to me that it is all about understanding where we are at now, and not necessarily using technology, but understanding our past, especially when we do plays that might have, or productions that might have been written 100 years ago or 50 years ago and may not align with our current sensibilities, and how to retell that story or to understand it from a new perspective takes innovation, and it takes kind of the idea, you know, we talk about it a lot now, of revisionist history of how to reimagine something under our current understanding of social political climate.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. Thank you, Jillian.
And I
Michelle.
find all.
Go ahead, Nancy.
That's okay. No, I just find with every project, you end up delving into it in a different way, and you always end up, because every day things happen in the world, and every day we get affected by everything around us, and there's so much going on, and we hear about so much more now, and all of that gets pulled into our work in some way, some form or another, and also too, our work ends up involving, you know, are combining so many different technologies, and combining so many ways of looking at things, and combining dance and theater, and we're sort of breaking the boundaries more between different disciplines, which I love, and we're just trying to get our stories across in whatever way it takes, and in this modern world we can move in that way more easily.
Yeah, jumping off what Nancy was talking about, working together in different ways, I think that definitely newer practices of collaboration are important, and working together differently is important. And also thinking about the world that we're in and how it's changed in the last 2 years, and how we just need to change. We need to be better. We need to work better together. That's really important in my practice.
Thank you, Michelle.
Et je crois aussi que l'innovation, on peut l'aborder aussi à travers la matérialité. C'est pas nécessairement en utilisant de nouvelles technologies, mais les matériaux évoluent, la façon, les fabrications évoluent. Alors on peut travailler les matériaux avec différentes approches, avec différentes équipes qui peuvent amener une nouvelle approche ou une nouvelle recherche, une nouvelle façon d'utiliser les matériaux pour exprimer notre monde dans lequel on vit aujourd'hui.
Merci, Linda. I think that's, I mean, yeah, that notion that innovation is a bit like on a continuum, right? Like you've all touched on that. Of course, it's forward looking, but it is also, you know, being conscious of what's behind us as well too. And that's, yeah, that was when that came up on the jury, that was really a really major, insightful moment for me. So thank you all for touching in on that. Another thing that the Siminovitch Prize celebrates is the work of a mid-career artist, or in this year, mid-career designers. And so I wanted to ask, again, this is going to be a question for all of you, so feel free to and offer anything that you might have to it. So mid-career artists. Looking back on your bodies of work until now, I'd be curious to hear you speak about what do you observe. Do you experience it as a series of projects, individual projects, or do you see it more like a whole? Thinking about this question, I'm thinking about artists like, say, Robert Wilson, whose work you immediately recognize, or Rabel Lepage, or designers like Michael Levine or Ez Devlin, where I at least perceive a kind of clear through line to their work. And I wonder if this is a consideration for all of you. Do you think about kind of trying to develop a singularity of voice, a style? Could you all just maybe briefly tell us a little bit about what is the through line for you all looking back on your practice so far?
Well, looking back, oh, go ahead, Linda.
No, that's okay. I will follow you.
No, looking back at all the work, it kind of there's definitely a path, but it's a path of relationships with different people, and I come back to those relationships all the time, and I feel like my life is sort of guided. I don't know, guided, but it kind of moves along with this group of people, like, and they're all different sorts of people, but I definitely, my work is reflected definitely from my relationships with them. But yeah, no, it's a very complicated thing, but definitely my life is going to continue working with all those people, and hopefully I'll be working with more people and become part of the family. And anyway, I probably wanted to add it into that.
I think that's like that's really interesting, Nancy. Kind of, it sounds like really identifying with your career with the collaborations, or like you kind of sounds a bit like defining your practice so far as being defined by the collaborative experiences you've had. Really interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And I find a lot of designers don't necessarily have control over their own career paths in the way that some other folks in theater might have. At least that's been my experience. A lot of the work that in my early career was just so I could get design work, and it wasn't necessarily a specifically chosen group of people. It sort of evolved to be that now. And I'm definitely privileged enough to be able to choose who I'm able to work with at this point. But I think definitely design being a response to what we're reading or what's being choreographed or, you know, what's being staged. I find that I don't necessarily have a complete, like my style isn't necessarily one style fits all. It's sort of like it, you know, my style needs to fit whatever show I'm working on in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that experience as well too, which is why I thought from you it was interesting to start with this question. I have, you know, the deepest respect and admiration for some of the artists that I've named, and you know, I've always been like, you know, but I don't, looking back at my own work, I don't have that same sense that I have, you know, looking at some others. So, Jillian or Linda, do either of you have any thoughts around this?
I mean, I'm very similar to Nancy in that found that the collaborations have shaped a specific approach or voice that I have. But overall, I do see a continuation in terms of a developing boldness and the ability to articulate my artistic perspective. So early on in my career, I may not have had that voice or had that even awareness of the importance of it. And then you discover it over time. And I feel like I'm getting bolder and bolder and wanting to experiment more with what I do and take more risks. And I think that's my through line, is that I get riskier as I get older and maybe more confident, right? Because there's, you know, you have these relationships that aren't going to be ruined by one experiment. You know, it's like people trust you, and it's a beautiful thing, trust in an artistic relationship. And it's so important to be able to take those risks together, and it's so exciting.
Yes.
Thank you, Jillian. That was really lovely and so insightful. Linda.
Oui, je crois que quand on démarre une carrière, on a des désirs, on a des quêtes, il y a quelque chose qui nous définit comme artiste. Mais je crois que ça se construit par la rencontre avec les équipes, avec certains metteurs en scène ou metteuses en scène, et qu'il y a lentement mais sûrement, on se définit comme créateur. On accumule des expériences qui, oui, tracent un chemin qu'on va reconnaître comme public. On va aller voir un spectacle, on va dire, ah, c'est cette signature-là. Mais je crois pas que le travail qu'on a, ce n'est pas pour aller tracer une signature, mais plutôt, c'est vraiment lié à la rencontre. La rencontre va construire un projet, va définir un projet qui va être teinté par la personnalité de chacun et de chacune. Puis, je pense vraiment que c'est après un certain temps que c'est ça, on reconnaît la signature d'un artiste. Après quelques années, en fait, parce que l'expérience va construire, va forger ce style-là.
J'adore cette idée, Linda, of the slowly developing, building, you know, just through the process of doing, as opposed to something that might be more conscious. Fascinating. Yeah, thank you all. Going to move on now to a couple of individual questions that I will address to some of you individually, but please, of course, as always, feel free to jump in. And because, you know, even if we're talking about light or costumes, we know that there's, you know, there's so many things that link all these different types of design together. So Michelle, I'm looking at you first. Light can be so subtle, and yet intuitively, I think we all understand how much it completely informs how we receive a story. I am going to quote you, if that's not too awkward. I want to make emotional connections with the audience through light. This is a two-part question. Can you speak first to how you use light to try and create connection? And, you know, how is light kind of involved in meaning making with an audience? I know that's quite broad, but, you know, if you have any insights into what that process might be like for you, I think that would be interesting to hear you speak about. And then in doing that and linked to innovation, how do you make sure that the technology that you use doesn't overshadow the human aspect of the story that you're looking at? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I might ask you the second question again.
Yeah, sure, great. Yeah, totally. I'm like, the two-part questions I know is a killer, but it's like I just want to try and squeeze in as much as I can.
That's okay. Sometimes I ramble. We'll try and get back to the second one.
I do too. Yeah.
I mean, I think in the sort of the simplest terms of like connecting with an audience, it's really about connecting with the speech, the story, the rhythm of the movement, the rhythm of the play. And I don't know if I can necessarily answer it in a really physical way, I guess. But I work with all the different properties of light to sort of tell the story. And the way that I connect with the audience is to be able to tell the story through light in a really clear way. So I do that through, through color or texture or direction or through movement. And I just really, try to understand the story at its base level. And I try and do that sort of really early on in the rehearsal process before I even get onto the stage or focus lights. So it's about me understanding the story so that I can tell the story to the audience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And that relates back to how I don't allow sort of technology to overtake that. I never want to have like a cool thing happen on stage without it being based in the story, you know? So, so I really need and want to go back to the story. And that's, you know, when I'm working with students, when I'm working with people that are asking how do I connect this cue to what's happening, and I'm not really making sense, but basically it's all about going back to the story and understanding at baseline what the story is, whether or not it's a piece of choreography that has no through line, that doesn't, you need to make sense. You need to make sense as the designer what it means to you.
I have to say, Michelle, I think I mean, for me at least, you were making sense. I'm really hearing that none of the decisions you take are actually, they're all actually coming more from a kind of story or dramaturgical place, and that without that kind of emotional root or connection, that the rest has no meaning. And so I don't know, that, I mean, that's what I heard. And super interesting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Jillian, I'm going to ask you, oh, actually, unless anyone wants to jump in and add anything to what Michelle just said.
I can say as a designer that doesn't work with light is your best friend. Like you don't love what you do until the lights are turned on.
Yeah.
It's my nightmare to walk into a theater and see my set in work light.
or like for someone else to see it, like for the director to see it in work light.
Yeah, in work light. You're like, don't look. So like the relationship with a lighting designer is so key, because they do illuminate your world and bring the story to life in such a beautiful way. And
really like I feel like emotionally carry us through this story in so many ways. But Jillian, speaking of disciplines and you not being a lighting designer, you are, however, this is a really convenient segue, thank you. You are, however, a designer that works in both set and costume design. And I'm wondering if you could speak to us a little bit about that, how you experience it. I've personally certainly had people who are like, so you kind of do architecture and fashion design, like, you know, non-theater people, and you know, kind of being perplexed by what job that, you know, that's a pretty broad job description. How do you experience it? Is it kind of for you two separate practices? Is it one practice? How do you, you know, how are setting costume design different for you, and how are they similar?
That's so interesting, because people are fascinated by it, by the combination. And I just have to say that I began as a set designer, and in school I was told I would never get enough work until I did another discipline. So I became a costume designer as well. And, you know, it does serve in many ways. But what I find with it is that when you are doing both disciplines, you have an immense capacity to envision an entire production. It's a luxury, because you, with the lighting designer who helps you create the visual world, you get to really have an immense amount of control over the whole visual story. However, collaboration is such a wonderful part of the job. So when I'm just doing one discipline, I love to play off of someone else's ideas and you know, be given a set to then think about how the costumes will play off of that set, and they may have designed a set I never would have imagined, you know. So it's never, I can never say that I prefer one over the other, or that I would rather do one. Each project is so individual, and sometimes I feel like I have to do both. I really want to do both, and sometimes I feel like it's a luxury to do one, because you're so immersed in just that one part. And interestingly, my career has gone where I've done a lot of just costume designs for big productions, but right now I'm doing just set designs, and they are different brains in a way. They require a different way of reading the script, of knowing a character, as opposed to knowing a character's environment. You know, like there's a total different way of understanding story for each discipline, I find. But I love being able to switch between the two. I wouldn't give one up ever.
It's interesting to hear you. I mean, connecting a little bit to what Michelle said. Just I hear in there that what might reunite, what that they both do look at the story, probably just looking at it from different angles, and that's I don't know. At least I'm kind of making a link in between them.
Yeah, well,
Michelle and Jillian have said.
Yeah, if you can imagine reading a script as a set designer where the environment is one character's house, so you design it with that character in mind and maybe how that house impacts other characters. But if you're doing costumes, you have to know the nuance of each character and the details of their life in a different way. So it is a very different way of thinking. Yeah.
Similar in terms of talking about different ways of thinking and approaching, Nancy, like many of our, well, in fact, like all of us, I think, you've worked in theater, opera, dance, television. Does the medium that you're working in or the field that you're working in affect your process or how you approach the work? Or is it, do you want to talk about that?
James, your voice is cutting. Your voice is cutting out. Sorry, could you repeat that? Sorry.
Oh,
your voice was just cutting out.
How is my voice now?
Oh, it's still cutting out. Sorry. Maybe
I wonder.
Just try again.
Yeah, how's my voice now?
It's good.
Okay, great. Maybe I could try taking out my earphones if that happens again.
Oh.
But so yeah, Nancy, I was saying,
yes.
You've worked like I think many of the finalists in theater, opera, dance, and television. And I wonder if, how is that for you? Is it different depending on what you're working in? How does your process, your approach, what's your experience like in those different fields?
Well, film is a whole other thing altogether.
Right. Yeah. Maybe just for the sake of this conversation, we can leave that aside.
Yeah. And I actually don't do film that much anymore. Because I prefer to work in the live theater. Opera. Working with the same people in all three areas. Sometimes the same one actor will end up being involved in a dance piece, like in Betroffenheit. Jonathan Young, I've worked with him as a theater actor as well as involved as a dancer in Betroffenheit. And Crystal Height sometimes will work in a theatrical way, and other times we'll be doing a big ballet with a lot of ballet dancers, like at all the Paris Opera or other places. But it's a whole other thing. And but the main, I guess, the through line in all of that is that I always work with a great shop of people that are constructing the work. And no matter where you are in the world, everybody uses the same dyes to dye your cloth, and they have similar materials and similar ways of doing things. And sorry, I was getting off track there, but there are so many similarities between the type of work that we do in no matter where we're working.
Great.
But so but the main thing is the people that we're working with, the other designers and the collaborators. It's I like to work on projects that involve thinking about new ways of approaching a subject and a new form of a story, and it makes me get excited. And sorry.
Well, actually, Nancy, this time your audio, I have to say, for me at least, did chop out a little bit. Oh, the joys of meeting together on Zoom brings us together, but not.
Right.
But what I did get was that it sounds to you like, yes, the fields may differ, but that at the core of it, there is a process, whether that be with your collaborators or in the atelier, that to you, there's a through line. through, you know, whether it's an
Yes.
opera, dance, or theater. And
Mhm.
yeah, thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
Anyone have want to jump in on that?
Sorry, my audio was breaking up there. Sort of make things confusing.
I don't know if anyone else, is everyone else hearing okay? Yeah, great. Thanks, Michelle. Linda, parlons-nous de la conception de costume. Pour moi, il me semble que la conception de costume implique un équilibre entre le côté technique, le savoir-faire, l'artisanat et une réflexion poétique. Je vais te citer. Tu as écrit: je cherche à faire résonner l'humanité des personnages, leur vérité, leurs mensonges et leur relation au monde. Le costume n'est pas un coquille vide, une fantaisie. Il dévoile la nature profonde du personnage. Linda, pourrais-tu nous parler un peu de comment le costume peut révéler quelque chose d'intime sur un personnage?
Oui. Bien, pour moi, quand je travaille, je travaille avec la matérialité, les matériaux, tout ça. Puis, je veux d'abord, dans un premier temps, faire apparaître la silhouette, mais l'approche, la façon d'approcher le costume me permet de valider des émotions comme la partie intérieure de chacun des personnages. Alors, c'est ce que j'essaie de représenter sur scène, leur intériorité, comment à travers la construction du costume ou la construction, la manipulation de la matière, je peux faire apparaître le personnage ou, je dirais, lui permettre de respirer, de prendre forme sur scène, de faire apparaître son intériorité. Parce que quand on lit une pièce, on a des informations, on a des didascalies, on a des détails qui nous permettent de faire des choix. On rencontre la personne à la mise en scène, il y a une discussion qui s'établit pour définir les personnages, on discute avec l'acteur. Alors, à travers le contour, l'habitat qu'il a, j'essaie de faire apparaître une certaine sensibilité puis une certaine émotivité qui passe par la matérialité. Et donc, pour moi, ça nomme quelque chose qui est pas concret, qui est pas réaliste, qui est pas muséal non plus, mais qui est plutôt de l'ordre du sensible.
Merci Linda. Personnellement, c'est ça ce que je ressens en regardant ton travail. Merci pour ça. We're going to roll along because time is actually moving a little bit faster than I thought it might, but on to some next questions. Jillian, coming back to you. You have designed an Indigenous King Lear at the National Arts Centre, Louis Riel at the Canadian Opera Company, and the Octoroon at the Shaw Festival. What has your process been like approaching these specific pieces that represent stories or address issues of representation of cultures that you are not a part of? How do you approach this as a designer, and how have these past experiences informed your practice?
Great. Yeah, great question.
Just tiny small questions.
Yeah, small issues to contend with.
Yeah.
I mean,
as you know.
But I love these works, and I love taking on these challenges, and they've all been productions that have been quite an honor to be a part of, because they do represent some very important moments in history in our Canadian theatre. And representation is is important to me in terms of what we put on the stage. And the really collaboration is a huge part. So all three of those productions were with the same director, Peter Hinton, who Peter Hinton as well is not, he's a white male, and he is not a part of the Indigenous community or a racialized group. But he commands and has a deep respect for the work that he does, and he commands a respect from people that he builds so much trust in the room. And I take on those productions with him because of that, because I know how well we will investigate these ideas of representation together as a group and collaborate to really take the time to consider what we're doing. An Octoroon is very interesting because it's a play that itself deals with representation, the content of the play. You have a play that within the first half hour, you have a Black man put on white face, a white man put on red face, and an Indigenous man put on black face. So right there, the author himself is confronting the issue. And so what was great about doing that production was like pushing and diving deeper into these ideas of representation and what they mean, and really kind of contending with it. And within the script, the representation of the Indigenous character, so a white man puts on red face to become the Indigenous character of a historical drama, and the representation called for in the script represented a very American view of a Native American character, calling for a headdress, which we understand in our Canadian context is not something to be done lightly, or even to be done at all, without proper understanding of what a headdress means. So we actually chose not to do that in our production. It was a very conscious choice. But what was important to us was, what is the representation that matters in a Canadian context? And so we ended up pushing kind of our envelope by costuming that character fully in red, like literally red washing the character, which is something that we contend with within Canadian culture, I think. So it's a big thing, but I just want to also add that in Louis Riel, I think the most contentious costume that I did was actually the representation of Sir John A. Macdonald, which was to, instead of use the icon and the statues and the portraits that are all done of him, was to actually like tear that down and show a character that looks nothing like Sir John A. Macdonald. And more people had issue with that than any costume I've done. So I find it interesting, our understanding and the power behind representation. Yeah.
Thank you, Gillian. Thank you for that. Yeah, just hearing, again, notions of, collaboration, communication, and yeah, thank you for all of that. Again, we'll move on. Linda. En regardant ton travail, en fait, les images qu'on va voir maintenant sur la scène, pour moi, c'est impossible d'imaginer séparer tes créations des univers dans lesquels ils existent. Pourrais-tu nous en parler de ce processus, le processus de collaborer avec les autres concepteurs pour créer ces mondes qui semblent si cohérents?
En fait, j'adore travailler en équipe. Ce qui me fascine dans cette collaboration, c'est que pour moi, quand on a des idées, quand on est inspiré, pour moi, ça existe déjà. C'est-à-dire, on est catapulté d'images aujourd'hui, alors on emmagasine, on est des visuels, on est des créateurs, on est visuels, alors on emmagasine des images. On a des premières idées, puis je pense que cette idée-là ne peut que prendre forme et se magnifier qu'avec le travail des autres collaborateurs. J'aime être présente aux premières réunions de scénographie. Bien sûr, assurément, tout le monde a des réunions de production où toute l'équipe est là et discute, mais d'être dans le secret des dieux du travail scénographique ou tout ça me permet d'aller chercher des informations qui ne seront pas nécessairement utilisées concrètement sur scène, mais qui pour moi peut être un aliment, des aliments que je vais mettre dans ma recette, que je peux soutirer. Ces premières pistes de recherche, cette première discussion scénographique pour établir la planète. Et j'aime piger là-dedans pour m'accaparer cette chose-là et puis l'insérer subtilement à travers les personnages. Chaque personnage, pour moi, est une entité en soi. Alors, le fait d'aller chercher ces informations-là, que ce soit à la scénographie, les inspirations de la lumière, me permettent de construire le personnage.
Super. Merci, Linda. Nancy, we're now going to show a few images of a piece that you mentioned earlier, Betroffenheit. And it's a show that, from what I understand, explored what happens to a person in the wake of trauma. And one of our collaborators, one of the producers for this evening, described seeing the show and feeling just impressed, overwhelmed by how much the costume seemed imbibed with profound meaning and kind of raw emotion. I don't know how that is for you to hear that. I wonder how you relate to that statement. And, you know, this is a big question, but is there anything you want to say about combining an actor's body and a piece of cloth to kind of evoke meaning or incarnate human raw emotion?
Well, I loved what Linda was just talking about those first meetings and the kinds of things that come up in those first meetings and how you kind of create a recipe and ingredients as you go along. And this piece was a very emotionally sensitive piece right from the start. And it was a long process to get there, and it sort of stopped and started and went through many different stages. But and just watching rehearsals and watching the development of it and just sort of figuring out what was going to work and what wasn't going to work, and as you see, what was going to combine with the body to make it into one thing that expressed the main intent of this piece without distracting from it, but also being very bold. As Jillian was saying, like as we get older and as we go along, we learn how to become bolder with our statements and what we do. And there were some very bold statements in this piece in particular. And it was, it was just knowing that right level of what a fabric needs to do and what the breakdown needs to do and what it needs to accomplish, and then what it all looks like under the lights, and what the light brings to it and how it affects everything. It's all just a huge balancing act of how you can meld the fabric and these costumes and these people together. I must say it helps a lot to actually know who you're working with and who the actors are and who the dancers are and what sort of personalities and they bring into it and what effect they'll have on a piece. Because you have to, as a costume designer, you have to delve into, figuring out what these characters are and what their purpose is within the context of the show, and how all of that is going to come together to make this one piece that's going to flow and move through emotional time. Anyway, this piece was, I think it was one of the most complex pieces emotionally that I've ever worked on, that all of us have ever worked on, I think. And just to know, or to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work, and to pull away anything that's not working, and to break things down further if
Thank you.
to fit in more.
Thank you, Nancy. I know that's, gigantic to ask to squeeze that entire process into a few sentences on Zoom,
Okay.
but I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then Michelle, we're going to see a short video of your work, which is a clip that we're going to be showing without any audio. And Michelle, this question is our COVID-19 question. When COVID-19 hit, you began adapting your lighting designs to work over filmed live streams. I can imagine that must have been quite a process going from lighting for live to lighting for, webcams. Could you just speak a little bit about that, how you adapted and what that meant for you and how you experienced that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's varying degrees of quality of the work that we did. Just because the camera can be so different from Zoom to like broadcast quality to film quality, and those qualities really change my work as well. So one of the first plays that we did right after, right into the pandemic was over Zoom with Factory Theatre. We did House, the isolation version, and Zoom is not kind to lighting. It's not, it corrects in a weird way, and it does all sorts of strange things that you wouldn't expect. It was just so unexpected. But we worked with it, and we tried to make it feel as live as we could. And then so each time I worked in those sorts of situations, I learn a little more. But the one thing that we always strive to bring is a sense of live interactive. It's not interactive, live work that the audience can connect with in a way that's hopefully different than a filmed piece of theater. And the work that I really want to, sorry, my cat feeder's going off. I don't know if you hear that. It became really important to myself and some of the collaborators that we bring this really live feel to the work that we do online now. I'm not great with film lighting or television lighting, and I don't actually want to do it. I crave that thing that happens when you're sitting in a live audience and you can hear people breathe, you can hear people laugh, you can hear people cry, and you don't get that with this situation that we've got going on. So I think it was sort of an in the meantime thing, and I just want to return to in-person work. I miss it. I want to have someone sitting next to me and understand what they think of the play just by sitting next to them.
Wow, I love that. Wow, thanks, Michelle. I love that. So we're going to skip to the next portion of the evening. We have some special guests with us tonight. In fact, we have 3 emerging designer students from the National Theatre School of Canada who are going to join us and ask you all some questions. These are the Seno 1 and Seno 2 students, or some of them at least. And first up, I believe we have Kathleen.
Yes, hi. So my name is Kathleen. I am a first year student at NTS in scenography. And my question is this. So did you ever felt like people you're working with doesn't understand your vision? And if so, how do you deal with it without losing any motivation for your work?
Thank you, Kathleen. Is there anyone that wants to hop on that question? Motivating unmotivated collaborators.
It's always a negotiation. So I've never necessarily felt like someone was totally against something, but it's a constant sharing. So it's about, you know, whether you lay out a whole bunch of images that inspire you and try to find the common theme that helps inspire the other person, or if you have something distinct, to actually work through why perhaps someone doesn't see it or doesn't understand your vision, can help you clarify your ideas. I think as designers, and the great thing about this award actually, or this prize, was you have to articulate, and you have to learn to articulate your ideas. And it doesn't always, you know, you have to do the drawings, you have to do the maquette, all these things, but you also have to learn how to speak about it. And I think it's such an important part of our job. And sometimes by doing that, by getting into those discussions about what is right or wrong, or what you think, helps you clarify it, and can often bring someone else on to your vision. But there is also an element of working with people who also can trust. It goes back to that thing of trust. I did a production of the Russian play with a new director, and we had a vision, and I kept putting a chandelier on the ground, and she didn't understand why, but I was like, I see it, I don't know, like I think this has to be part of it, with the full awareness that if she didn't like it, we were going to cut it, you know. But the chandelier stayed, and Michelle actually did the lighting for that show, so it's kind of hilarious. But it's always a negotiation, so it's never a win or a lose thing. It's a constant dialogue that you have to keep articulating over and over again.
Jillian, I have to say, sorry, Nancy, please.
Oh, it's okay. No, you bring the element. It's never rejected. It sort of sparks a little interest in somebody else, and then you'll go somewhere else, and then it just constantly builds. But it's never a rejection. Like if you're with your collaborators and your people that you like to work with and then understand you and where you're coming from, it always kind of just works together, and it's never like, no, I don't like that, or
great. I love that. I'm hearing a link between Jillian and Nancy, where don't see that potential conflict as a problem, but rather an opportunity to clarify your message and the idea, you know. And I think that's such a beautiful way of thinking about it, that, you know, I see something similar.
Sometimes a wild idea can sort of spark something else, you know. It'll be a silly idea that you just come up with that you know is silly, but you know that it has something to do with it. It might spark a little bit of interest and move things in another little direction. And anyway, it's a fun process.
I was going to say, I think it's also important to not be precious with ideas. To be prepared to throw them out, to be prepared to evolve that idea continuously throughout the process. And the problem sometimes comes when you hold on to something for too long, you know.
and you know, trying things is really just going for it. And you know, if someone doesn't necessarily understand your vision, asking a lot of questions, like what is it about it, you know, is it because I'm going this way, maybe we can swing it back this way. There's so many ways to talk to folks about your work, and how you know, exactly what Jillian was talking about, like clarifying your vision, and clarifying what you are seeing and what you are understanding, and asking your collaborators to do the same thing is so important.
Yeah, thank you. That's so great. We're going to go on to our second question. So next up we have Juliette.
Hi, my name is Juliette Dubé-Tyler. I'm in Senior's second year at NTS, and my question is, what are your favorite communication tools? So drawing maquettes on your computer, 3D models. Thanks.
Thank you, Juliette. Linda, en fait, peux-tu répondre?
Oui, bien sûr. Bien, en fait, je vais travailler d'abord avec un tableau, des tableaux d'inspiration, mais aussi des études, des esquisses dans un premier temps. Et puis, j'aime beaucoup amener des textiles dès les premières rencontres, juste pour faire en sorte qu'on apprivoise la matière, qu'il y ait quelque chose de tactile ou de sensible. Puis par la suite, là, on va travailler les maquettes pour développer vers des maquettes finales. Mais c'est possible aussi de tester des choses, d'amener peut-être un essai, quelques éléments de costume, faire quelques petits prototypes pour bien faire comprendre la direction vers laquelle on va tendre.
Merci Linda. Fait que de ce que je comprends, c'est que c'est pas que sur le papier que le processus de design se passe. Parfois, ça peut passer avec des vraies matières aussi.
Oui, absolument. Puis même, je dirais absolument. Je trouve que c'est une autre approche qui est moins, je dirais, précise, plus organique et que ça peut toucher d'une façon différente les personnes avec qui tu discutes.
Merci Linda. I think we will actually go directly onto our third student, just looking at the time. And so next up, we have Safia.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Sophia Karaji, and I'm in first year at NTS. What has been one of the most valuable experiences or lessons that has helped shape you as a creator? Thank you.
Valuable lessons. What has shaped your path as a creator? Anyone want to jump onto that?
I think to be a good listener, like to really listen and to absorb everything in the room with the creators of the first meetings, and just to take notes and just to be observant, and to have read all the material that you possibly can to do with the project, so that you come in with some like a great knowledge of what you're getting into. That's my advice.
Thank you.
I think that's great. I totally agree with that. And I think I would just add the value of being curious
Yes.
about the world, beyond yourself, and whatever that means, if that means, eventually post-pandemic traveling, or whether it means, just exploring other art forms, or, even other forms of study. I think it's always good to expand your horizons. I think it's really important as artists to do that.
No, absolutely. Like I come from a fine arts background, and to go to galleries and to explore other people's work, and to just to open your mind to what's happening in the world. I totally agree.
Yeah, that notion.
I was just going to say, go and watch the sunset as much as you can.
Yeah.
Walk on the beach.
Yeah.
And the lighting designer, right?
Right.
Off to the sunset.
Yeah.
I do think that's really beautiful advice. Linda, aurais-tu quelque chose que tu offrir de plus à Safia?
Oui, moi aussi je suis d'accord avec vous toutes. En fait, il faut être curieux, s'ouvrir sur le monde, chercher, que ce soit dans les musées, dans la nature, autour de nous, même d'être sensible aux gens qui nous entourent, à leur présence. Tout est une nourriture pour valoriser le travail. Oui.
Super. Well, I love, it's very satisfying when everyone is, building on each other, and this idea of listening in the room, in the meetings, but also in the world, and outside of the work, at the sunset, at the beach. I love that. Just keeping your ears, your eyes, your heart open. I think that's beautiful. Kim, I'm wondering how we're doing on time. I feel that I'm realizing now that I forgot to tell the audience that they were welcome to use the Q&A function at the bottom of their screens and put questions in the chat. I see we have had 1 or 2 questions put in there. And if we have time, unless Kim comes on and tells me we're out of time, I think I will go into that. But audience, definitely, if there's anything that you would like to ask our 4 panelists, the 4 finalists, please put it in the Q&A button somewhere at the bottom of your screen. Great. So there's a question here from Heather, and it says, do the panelists feel that they've always wanted to be designers? Or did it start, maybe I want to be a playwright and or director and or actor? Where did your entry point into theater come from?
Always a designer.
Always a designer.
I think I wanted to be an artist when I was younger, and I didn't fall into theater until later, I think in my early 30s. And then I loved it, and I didn't realize it was an option when I was a child, somehow.
Thank you for that. Just looking at some other questions here. Michelle, question directly for you from the audience. Another easy one. What poetic themes do you find lighting is most equipped to explore? What themes do you find most exciting to explore with light? So I think you could maybe choose one, you could choose one or the other and answer.
Oh, I feel like all poetic themes, lighting is equipped to explore everything. Themes that I find exciting, that's a hard one. I really, I just love telling stories. So I don't know if a specific theme is something I gravitate towards more. I feel like the stories that I want to hear are there's not really a specific theme, I would say. I just love to, I love narrative. I love hearing what people have to say. I love hearing new things, things that I've never heard before, new experiences. So I think like a specific theme is really hard to pick out of all of that.
Well, thank you for that. Another question here in the chat that we have is, do you all think that the work is more affected by the script or the vision of the director or the budget? Which of those 3 do you think in the end actually has a bigger impact on the work?
I think it changes with each production. I don't think it can be defined, because if you're on a script that the director wants to pursue, by rote, then it's the script. And if you're on a production where the director wants to kind of throw out the script and revise it or rethink it or re-examine it, then it might be the director. And if you have no money, well, there's only so much you can do. So I don't know.
It's hard. Yeah. that money question is so hard because, you know, like early on in design discussions, I just want to throw that out the window because I find that really limits in those really, really early stages. So that gets thrown out, and then of course it always comes back. But in the beginning stages, if you don't think about money, then you can go in all sorts of different directions, and hopefully just be able to tell the story regardless of the budget that you have, you know?
I love the creative challenge around the budget thing, but I always think it's for me, like, it's driven by the director, and that's what I get the most out of. And the script, sometimes I'm not working with the script, and sometimes it's just ideas thrown out there by the director or by a small group.
Yeah, good point, Nancy. It's not always the director, right? Sometimes it's like the vision, the shared vision shared by the entire creative team, or the collaborators in a room
sometimes
who
the
are
script is a
perhaps
very
creating the work.
strong player.
Well, I think we were having some audio issues there for a second.
Yeah, actually, I didn't hear that.
And I think I didn't, yeah. And I think we're back now. Great,
Yep.
Perfect. I'm going to go into another question in the chat. This is from Cassie, and Cassie writes, I'm wondering if any of you have ever worked with companies who are working to make theaters more accessible for people of all abilities. Have any of you done any work in universal design? Cassie says, I'm researching for my thesis project and would just love to hear any thoughts you have on this. Any experience in universal design and live performance?
I'll just jump in here. Some of the work that I'm doing with the Associated Designers of Canada is trying to create workshops and panels to kind of discuss this amongst designers. I've done a little bit of work with companies that perform in ASL as well as English, kind of a bilingual performances. But is that what I think that's what they mean by universal design. But yeah,
that would be my understanding.
Yeah. But we're, you know, ADC is sort of working to try and expand our membership's knowledge of this kind of work.
Thank you, Michelle, for pointing us towards the Associated Designers of Canada's work around accessibility and universal design. Thank you for that. And I think I'm going to ask one more question from the audience, just checking in the chat here. And from Doris. COVID put the world in a standstill for almost 2 years now. We're now starting to go back. Do you think that you'll be doing things differently? And if yes, how will it make a difference in the field of theater? So, you know, the world, we're coming back to live performance again, or we have been for a little while in various ways. Any sense of how things are different or if they will be?
Well, practically speaking, there's a difference, like with touring shows because of COVID, and if it's an international tour, like we're worried about performers actually getting through airports without you know, being testing positive and having to be replaced immediately. Anyway, it's sort of, you end up sort of building costumes to cover 2 or 3 people for one character instead of one, just for a practical side of things. It makes things far more complicated for touring, for sure. And also for live theater. I think in musical theater or whatever, they have to have extra people that know the parts to fill in. It's on the practical side.
On a slightly different approach, I think what I hope that COVID might have made people realize is their appreciation of the live experience, and the ability to share a moment together rather than alone in front of our TVs or computers or whatever it is, right? So the thrill of actually being in a room together and why a live performance means so much. So I actually hope it invigorates that within not only the people who already went to theater, but hopefully beyond, you know, and gets us more excited to have those shared experiences. That's a very, I suppose, optimistic hope that people haven't turned more and more inwards and more attached to their devices and computers. But that, for me, it's reminded me of how much I love working together, collaboration, and being in the room to experience something together.
Well, thank you, Gillian. I think in a way, I'm going to use this as a segue into our wrap-up question and bring it back to the theme of innovation. We just talked about what COVID has kind of imposed. And now I'm going to quickly ask each of you to talk a little bit about innovation in the sense of looking into the future. All four of you have made significant contributions to the next generation of theater designers, whether it be through teaching, volunteering, or one-on-one mentorship. So looking forward in your careers and for the coming generation of designers like the students who joined us tonight, where do you see the greatest opportunity looking forward for innovation in theater design and Canadian theater? Does that make sense? Yeah. Where would you like to see us go next, or where do you imagine there's room for us to go next?
I would love to see a future of designers that is way more diverse in race, in age, in sexuality, and all in everything. We need to diversify, and I think as an industry, as designers, it's a very difficult industry to get into for a lot of folks, and I want to see that change. And I feel like a lot of the work that I do and a lot of the work that I want to do is to facilitate that change.
Thank you, Michelle. Yes, appreciate and second that. Does anyone else have any other thoughts they'd like to share about looking forward?
I agree with Michelle. I think it's important to definitely diversify voices. I can't think of a better answer than that, to be honest.
In a way, yeah.
And I find it difficult to think of anything beyond, 4 months from now for myself. So, let's go with Michelle's answer. It was great.
Yeah, I agree, actually. It's it's difficult. After this huge pause we've been on it and digesting all of what we've just gone through for the last 2 years. It's I agree with Michelle. That would be a good way into the future.
Moi aussi, je trouve que cet événement-là a eu un impact extrêmement grand dans notre univers, mais je pense aussi qu'il nous a permis une certaine réflexion, puis une ouverture pour la suite, pour la suite de nos métiers, mais aussi, je crois que l'impact de devoir être, de ne plus être en présentiel, en présence, en rassemblement, nous a certainement manqué et qu'il nous fait prendre conscience de l'importance des arts vivants. Et je pense que cet événement-là qui a fait qu'il y a eu beaucoup de captations, qu'il y a eu des Zooms, enseignements par Zoom et tout ça, a eu une incidence qui nous fait réfléchir sur notre façon de travailler dans le futur. Et qui nous fait prendre conscience aussi que il faut porter attention au travail non seulement technologique, parce qu'on en a eu plein les yeux durant la pandémie, et puis cette rencontre-là humaine a été nous a manqué. Alors, je pense que en tout cas, il y a vraiment une prise de conscience de l'importance des métiers qu'on fait et puis du théâtre.
Wow, merci, merci Linda. Je trouve ça très pertinent. Merci. Oh, I see Kim has come back, which I think means.
I hate to have to interrupt this. Such an amazing, fascinating conversation with so many beautiful insights. I would like to thank all of you, Michelle, Linda, Jillian, Nancy, and James, for sharing your thoughts and your insights with us today. I think we're all carrying so much from this conversation. And congratulations once again to each of you finalists on being shortlisted for the prestigious Siminovitch Prize. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci à tous, à vous tous, d'avoir pris le temps de vous joindre à nous. Thank you. The Saminovitch Foundation has been stimulating innovation in Canadian theatre for 20 years by awarding Canada's largest and most prestigious annual theatre award. This is possible because of a community of donors and sponsors who believe that supporting artistic risk-taking is an important investment. We want to thank a few supporters in particular for making today's conversation possible. Thank you, Power Corporation of Canada, the Siminovitch Prize shortlist presenter, for your commitment to art and artists throughout Canada. Thank you to the McLean Smiths Family Foundation, Tricon Residential, the Gerald Schwartz and Heather Reisman Foundation, and Gail Asper for supporting the Siminovitch Forum throughout 2021. The Siminovitch also, please mark your calendars and save the date for our next gathering. You won't want to miss the Siminovitch Prize show on December 2nd, where we will be presenting intimate 4-minute documentaries about each of these groundbreaking designers and awarding the $100,000 prize. An invitation will arrive in your inbox tomorrow, or you can register right now by clicking on the link in the chat. Merci à tous d'avoir pris le temps de vous joindre à nous pour ce forum Siminovitch, and thank you to our interpreters and translators, Jean, Fanny, Carmel, and Catherine. And one final word of gratitude for our event partners at the National Theatre School and the 2 professional associations of designers in Canada, the ADC and the APSQ. Thank you all so much. We look forward to celebrating with you again on December 2nd.